tell your friends constantly for absolutely no reason at all that you love them and you miss them. If you're listening to this right now, like I want you to just text a random friend, say, Cutie, I love you and I miss you.
And I think a shared passion or a shared interest, or even having like the same favorite snack, is wonderful.
Exactly.
Sort of fodder for a
100%.
starting
Like,
point of a
let's be clear,
friendship.
let's not
One shared
intellectualize the word.
interest.
Just something that breaks the ice and just gets you to connect with another human being is so life changing in your 30s and your 40s. I cannot even tell you.
I'm Lisa Mangaldas, and this is Love Matters. And today we're talking about one of the most valuable yet too often under-prioritized relationships in adult life: friendship. When you're a kid, making friends can be as easy as sitting next to each other in class or going out onto the monkey bars together. But unfortunately, as adults, it becomes much more difficult. And yet, study after study has indicated that friendship is central to human happiness. So, how can we get better at making and sustaining friendships, even as adults? That's what I'm going to be talking about today with my guest, Rohan Joshi, one of the country's most accomplished comedians, a terrific writer, and one of the smartest, kindest, most compassionate people I know. Also, someone I feel very lucky to be able to call a friend. Rohan, thanks so much for joining us on Love Matters. I am so delighted to be talking to you today.
Hi, friend I made as an adult. That's amazing. That's the most important part. You forgot the most important part of the intro. Friend you made as an adult.
Right? Would you say that you can tell, minutes after meeting someone whether they're likely to be a close friend or not?
I think so. I think, in fact, I would go so far as to believe that I am a much stronger believer in sort of love or friendship at first sight than I am in romantic love at first sight. I feel like there have been way more times in my life where I've had that sort of, Bollywood moment of, you say something and somebody says something and your eyes meet across the room, like, yeah, this idiot and I are going to be great friends for a really long time.
And do you think that as you've gotten older, you've gotten better at identifying who's likely to be a friendship that have for life, and who maybe is just a fleeting interaction because you're working on a project together or happen to be at the same place? I find that I have like my radar has gotten stronger as I've
I've
gotten older.
I feel like my radar for I'm going to find this person tiresome has definitely gotten better. In
Which
fact,
unfortunately in my case is like 90% of people, which is why I feel like I have such few friends.
no, but quality over quantity, right? With friends, I think what happens as you age is if sort of friendship is like if you had to think of it as a sort of bunch of grapes, I think when you're young, it's like friendship like a bunch of grapes. You just have hundreds to hand out to sort of everybody. But as you get older, it sort of becomes like I have this box of dozen mangoes and I have a dozen friendship mangoes to give out. And I just rather hand out these 12 mangoes to 12 people that I care about. And then I want to look into their eyes as we disgustingly eat mango together. Um, and I think that's how it works. You have fewer friends, but you have friends that you're thrilled to see every single time you see them. And I think that's what counts.
I actually have less than 12, but I still think that, those few, it could even be fewer
As
than
it
that
could
you
be
can count
two,
on
it could
one
be three,
hand.
but as long as they delight you, as long as they delight you, as long as it's not even about feeling good, feeling bad, because see, sometimes you can be having a bad day also, right? So you might not, but it's just, I think when you see a call from them or a text from them, or when they walk in the door, and the day just feels a little better than it felt before they were there, I think that is enough. That is enough. Like on my worst days, it's completely okay for me to be around my friends and not, and we don't say a word to each other, but just being in each other's presence and just sort of knowing that if I did have to be vulnerable, this would be a safe space and these would be safe people around whom to do it.
So the longest study on human happiness is actually a Harvard study that's been going on for 85 years. And
Okay.
it established that there's a really strong correlation between deep relationships and well-being, which I mean, I guess we didn't need Harvard to tell us that, but basically
No,
good
but
relationships,
it doesn't hurt when Harvard
it
tells you
doesn't
something
hurt, it
like that.
doesn't hurt, right? So
Doesn't
good
hurt. It doesn't hurt.
relationships literally lead to health and happiness. Where, I mean, research found that people actually tend to live longer when they have strong relationships as compared to those who are isolated. Or, where loneliness is actually correlated with anxiety and depression and even physical illness. So much so, in fact, that a report issued recently by a Surgeon General from the US actually warned that a lack of social connection is as damaging to health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And worst affected are men,
Damn.
by the way. And I was like, gosh, I smoke cigarettes and I'm isolated, man. I'm gonna die young.
Yeah, I
But
was just going. So what I'm saying is, if I smoke 15 cigarettes with 15 of my closest friends around me at all time,
do you
does that
mitigate
cancel
the
out the effect?
yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out. I'm trying to figure out. Is this a friendship study? Is this a smoking study? But I mean, again, I'm not a scientist, but it's just one of those things. To hear you say it, it just sounds intuitively true, right? Like where, of
Right?
course, if you're lonely, you're going to, because I mean, it's your will to live comes from so many things, right? It comes from whether it's just having laughter in your life, whether it's having joy in your life, just something that you want to see, something to look forward to.
And I think as an adult, often, just the sort of productivity trap, this idea that your identity is so much about how successful you are at work. And then, the relationships we're kind of encouraged to prioritize tend to be family and romantic partner above all else. There's definitely this hierarchy of love concept that at least I
No,
unfortunately
no.
resonate with to some extent, where I always put family and partner first and work after that, and then there's so little time, just in a practical way. My friends tend to get the little time that's left over, and it's something I'm really trying to get better at. But you seem like someone who's really hacked that. Like I see your drum kit at the back as well. I feel like you're always able to I guess people make time for what's important to them. And to some extent, we have to unlearn this hierarchy. Like work, for example, I really think might not deserve the huge pedestal it seems to occupy in everyone's life. Even after you've reached the financial goals you need for basic survival, etc. Like your sense of self-worth, when it's linked to how successful you are, it can actually be
Yeah.
really lonely if all you're doing is working, right? So what are your thoughts on that? Do you feel your friendships also get only the crumbs of your time, or do you think as an adult you've
No,
managed to keep them front and center?
I feel like they don't necessarily get it. It's sort of like exercise and gymming, right? Am I a perfect teacher when it comes to exercising or going to the gym? Probably not. I could probably spend a few more hours being a little more disciplined and focusing, but I still feel like I do more of it than the average person. And I think that that's paid some pretty rich dividends in my life. It's interesting that you mentioned, we sort of prioritize the family and the romantic unit over platonic relationships and friendships and things. And I think, and I could be wrong, I'm not an expert, this is just purely on my own observation, and this is as much a question to you as it is a statement. Do you think that that sort of hierarchy of love, aside from a being damaging to yourself, which obviously it can be because you're exhausted and stretched too thin trying to do right by family, doing right by romantic love, but do you think maybe, because this is what I think that it's actually damaging to the family unit and to your romantic partner if you don't have other places to go and grow as a person, because it just puts so much pressure and strain on those units, right? Like, say for example, on the one hand you've got family and romantic love, but say now you, like, I've seen marriages and this thing where the partner becomes such a sole focus that at the end of the day you are going to be disappointed in each other, because no one person, like, how is one person supposed to take all the best of you and all the worst of you and all the everything? You're going to eventually sort of chew each other out, like, and just spit each other out, right? That's going to happen. Versus, if you have friends or if you have people you can talk to, you can get different perspectives. There's more people to sort of, when you're sad, you can go be sad with other people. If you're having a fight with your partner, you can go get perspective from other people. You can go just blow off steam. You can go learn new things. You can come back, and this is important for you. This is important for your partner. This is important for families. I genuinely think, like, today, so much of what we see with older people, right, when they get sucked into whether it's WhatsApp conspiracies or in America they talk about QAnon, etc. So much of that has to do with the fact that today's old people are largely lonely people who were taught generationally to focus so hard just on building that family or romantic unit, that, all other relationships were neglected. And now you're sort of lonely. You don't have sort of warm relationships and happiness to fill up that space. And that idle mind, something's going to move in there eventually, and it's going to be darker and worse. Right. And I genuinely feel like being in sort of friendly relationships, etc., it makes you use your brain more, it makes you use your heart more, it keeps you more present in the moment. It does so many of those things that I feel like could keep away so many problems later on in life.
Yeah,
So yeah, I 100% think it's important.
I would absolutely agree with you. I just think that to some extent, it's not the family or the romantic partner that's making it difficult to spend times with friends. For me, at least, it's that work takes so much of my time that then I have so little time even to give these parties in my life that then there's just nothing left over, you know? And I think that's a really unfortunate aspect of work when, especially when it entails technology, as well as when you're working from home, it can just, there's like so little work-life divide in a way
Mhm.
that you're never not working, you know. And I also think technology creates this illusion that you have that you have all these people, especially on social media or something, right? We have
100%.
hundreds of thousands of people who seemingly resonate with things we say, or I don't know, you maybe feel a little bit seen on the internet or
These
something, but how many
parasocial
real?
relationships that everybody's talking about, right? Like
Exactly,
where it's
exactly.
either sort of you attached to a bunch of people on social media or attached to the celebrity, but you don't have a real relationship. I think the work thing, of course, it's very true. And I want to be very clear about the fact that, I know that I'm a privileged person. We're both reasonably privileged people in terms of our financial situation, etc. And I get that there are people who are working sometimes 24/7 because they have to and they don't have a choice. And those are their circumstances of it. But I feel like the real disservice we do is when we frame the other end of this spectrum, where we sort of frame it as this dichotomy of there is my work time and there is my free time. And if
Mm,
I have this free time is this very dispensable concept of if I have it, then I will see. If I have a free minute somewhere, I will go for a walk. If I have a free minute somewhere, I will call this friend. I actually think we need to stop looking at this free time as this dispensable concept. You need to have some discipline about it in the same way that you would with the gym or with this thing. You have to tell yourself, you know what, even if I'm working 24/7, I will take out, it's not free time. I am carving out 1 hour on Sunday, if nothing, to at least do a Zoom call with three friends and catch up with people and have people aware of what my emotional state is and take the sort of temperature of my friend's emotional state. All right. Like today, when I started playing tennis or I started playing sport, I was very aware of the fact that I was coming from a place of sort of privilege as a freelancer, as somebody who's financially okay, all of those things. But at that sports field, you meet people who are working way harder than you and who actually do 9 to 5, but they are taking the time by not treating this as free time, but by treating this as like an inviolable, like
mm,
sacred hour of their time that they have to make space for, whether it's to go play football or go play tennis. And through that play is one, you are having a social interaction that is not transactional or status oriented. You are you're socially interacting with people while you are releasing endorphins and there's dopamine in your body. And I think what happens when you start playing is, like, if you're playing doubles tennis, if you're playing football or you're playing whatever, the sort of power moves so much from player to player to player, right, that it's never like just one hierarchy being established, right? I feel like in a normal conversation, like just with say close friends, there'll be one person who'll be dominant and you have to listen. But in sport, like if I'm the goal scorer today, I have a little power, there's another guy who's killing it, and then through this play, you're bringing so much emotion out, positive, negative, all of it. And with people who have no reason to be there, there's no transactional reason to be there other than the fact that you'll just enjoy doing this, right? And I feel like there's a whole dimension of your personality that over years gets just straight up castrated away when you don't engage in these things. And I think that one of the things that has genuinely kept my joy alive is the fact that I get to go out 2 to 3 times a week and do things that children take for granted, like yell, scream, fall to my knees, run and hug someone because we scored one lucky point out of nowhere, throw a racket to the ground once in a way, make stupid jokes, come up with nicknames for people. I think play has genuine brain changing effects that we forget and it's just we forget so fast. because as kids, like you said in your introduction, this is something that as children we are encouraged to do every day, every single day. You finish school and then you go and you play, you do something, and then somehow we go from that to never, and only if possible will you do this social interaction with other people that is not transactional or status based and just enjoy yourself. That's gonna take itself out on society.
Men, in particular, I think, are often, as adults, even more unable to express emotion or be vulnerable because
Yeah,
it's kind of like against the grain of how masculinity is coded in
yeah,
society, right? Like men are not
absolutely.
supposed to cry or hug or
No, you're supposed to be this
seem
lonely
scared.
sort
Or,
of
exactly.
sentinel by yourself. And I don't
And
think that's true.
would you say, though, that it was a journey for you to be able to sort of become comfortable being vulnerable or emotionally honest with other men? Or was that something that always came naturally to you? Or do you think something like sport allows for a sort of medium via which to experience all of life's emotions in a socially acceptable format for men?
I think sport is a great gateway, sort of, to just being able to reconnect with people, especially whether it's team sport or doubles or any of those things. Uh, I genuinely believe that that's true. In my case, personally, I was very lucky that I, from a very young age, like whether it's school or in college only, I got to interact with boys who were luckily in touch with their emotions. And I'm very proud to say that those are still some of the closest friends that I have. We've held on to those bonds. In fact, it's funny that you should say that, but I have a live example for you where my entire sort of weekend was spent with these two boys, and we had a sleepover, and we played video games, and we talked about our feelings, and we ate ice cream together, and we had the best time. And when they left yesterday, we have a group chat where we've sent messages to each other. Oh my god, I love you guys. The house seems so quiet without you. I miss you. And they're also like, oh man, we miss you and we can't wait to do this again. And that was just such a positive weekend. And I just feel so good. And so I'm just very lucky to be sort of surrounded by, and I'm very aware of how poor my mental state would be if they weren't in my life. And if this was a weekend I'd sort of spent on my own or just sitting and watching TV alone and smoking, and to have that physical interaction and playing video games, and we screamed at each other and we cussed at each other and we high-fived and we hugged and we went through this whole sort of range of emotions that were otherwise have just been trapped inside of us, and it was great.
And do you think that gender plays into the nature of your friendships? Like, would you say there's a brotherhood or something with the types of friends that you just described spending the weekend with that's a bit different from the quality that your friendships with women or people of
I
other
think
genders might
so.
occupy?
I think with these people, yes, I think it's more than, in this case, more than a gender thing, because I do have friends like this, like of all genders, where I think there's been a sort of comfort over time. But what has happened is we have never taken these friendships for granted. It's never just been like, you know what, oh, we've been friends for 20 years, so we keep tending this garden. This is with friends of all genders. We keep tending this garden. We keep texting each other. We keep texting, like even on a group chat, if somebody seems to be a little off, there will be a private message of, hey, are you okay? What's going on? And I think that again, it's more than just the brotherhood and the boys, etc. I think what's happened is this is a group of people where we have allowed ourselves vulnerability for so long that to stop now would almost be a shame. Like in some way, I think, and this is where the pandemic also helped. We realized how lucky we were to have each other. In this time of such grave isolation, we realized how lucky we were, where even when we couldn't meet, just to have people that were texting and checking up on you and just doing things like that. And more importantly, people who are not doing it out of politeness. People where I can be so vulnerable, where I'll just be like, no, I'm not doing okay today. And like, the sort of constant, relentless, just death and sadness. And this, my head is not in a good place today. And to have them be like, it's okay. And I'm not going to try and cheer you up or sort of fake cheer you up into this or whatever, but just lean into the sort of sadness and vulnerability today. Just know that we are here, like for whatever that you need, and don't do anything stupid. And I think it's not that complicated, Lisa, in the sense that, like, you're saying, especially with gender roles, on the one hand, I think yes, men are taught to be lonely, etc. But even women, right? Especially in Indian society, when is a woman ever told to just go out and cultivate a friendship for the sake of it? Right? Like, in fact, the stereotype becomes the gossiping building aunties, which weirdly enough has only come because the only friendships that women of a certain generation could form was the friendships that they had to with their neighbors, where they'd come into with their husband's place or moved into like the man's family's place. When was that? Like, when do we see adult women at play in this country or in social spaces at all, for that matter, right? Because I feel like we see young women playing, and then we straight away see what has already become like this humorous stereotype of 60-year-old aunties going for walks in their kids and salwar kameezes. But what happens to women in the middle? What happens to them just sort of playing and engaging with each other in a vulnerable and happy way, where they get to share their insecurities and their sort of vulnerabilities with each other in a safe space? Is that something that we encourage? I don't think so. Like,
I
wherever
mean, I
I travel
think
in this country, I feel like women are really outside of the social space. Like, you see men on the street everywhere, but you see so few women.
I think women are definitely not at all remotely as entitled to public space, unfortunately, as men are. And there's also the aspect of safety that we're constantly made to feel aware
100%.
of and things like that. But I also feel like the way what is permissible is coded is such that women are able to express emotion more freely and also intimacy. You know, I could hold a woman's hand or give her a hug and kiss or sit on her lap, and it wouldn't be construed as sexual necessarily. Whereas I think men aren't allowed physical intimacy with each other without it being construed as sexual. And on the other hand, I think also women are more likely to be allowed
Yeah,
friendships with other women than with other
fair.
men, especially if they're already in a
100%.
relationship, you know? So there are
100%.
some gender politics that aren't necessarily a factor of one's desires or personality, but rather just thrust upon us as members of this society
Yeah.
that can be harder to navigate and harder as you're an adult, right? Like as a kid, I
Yeah.
feel
Yeah, for
gender
sure.
politics did not play into my friendships. Whereas if I'm honest, even despite all my privilege, etc., to some extent, I think it can be quite hard for an adult man and an adult woman to form a friendship if both of them are already in romantic relationships, because society just perceives that a man and a woman alone doing something, it must mean more
Yeah,
than a
fair.
friendship. You know, it's almost like
Fair. That's
many
true.
people aren't even allowed to engage with or imagine the possibility of a platonic friendship between an adult man and woman,
Yeah, it's true.
you
It's
know,
true.
which is so heteronormative and ridiculous because I mean, I could be having a sexual equation with a woman, right? I don't need to wait for some dude. Like,
Exactly.
where are the
Exactly.
politics make no sense, but I
I
think they
could be
definitely
having I
factor
could
in
be
even
having a
today.
sexually I could be having a sexual equation with somebody from the opposite sort of sex, where I don't even have a friendship or a relationship with them.
Also,
Right? Like, that's also possible, right? So it's so stupid to sort of do that. I
yeah.
do think in general that and adults, were not, I don't even know if we're encouraged to be lonely. I think yes, we are a little bit, but we're definitely not encouraged to sort of just go out and seek just solace in just which is when it strikes me as so silly, when in fact I feel like as you get older, you accumulate so many experiences that in fact you should be out there making friends, because your life is such a complex thing, and then this other person whose life is such a complex thing. Imagine what could happen if you just start having a conversation, right? Just imagine like what could happen. Like, I one of the most fortunate experiences of my life is about 5 years ago, since you mentioned the drum kit that's in the background, is I joined a drum hobby class. I don't want to be a drummer. I'm never going to be a drummer. I'm not very good at it. But I've just always wanted to learn the drums. And I went to this music school, and it was revelatory, because there's 4 or 5 people trying to learn the drums, there's 4 or 5 people trying to learn the guitars, 4 or 5 people trying to learn vocals, 4 or 5 people trying to learn the piano. And the only reason that all of us are here on this Monday evening is because we love music. And as adults, we thought, hey, this is not something that we got to do as kids. Let's just sort of be here and let's try and let's muck around. And we sort of started hanging out. And in the middle of all this, suddenly in my 30s, I'm friends with a high level HR executive from an FMCG company, a spinal surgeon, a dancer, two executives from like random financial institutions, people of different ages, a kid who was just in college. And as a result of this, we all just sort of started going out for beers together, and it became like a post class ritual for us, because all of us had this moment where we were like, nobody here has a transactional need of anything from anyone. every person here is so different from what I would meet in the normal run of my life, whether it's through work or whatever. Wow, we're just making friends. We're just making friends in the way we would in a garden or somewhere else. And we're still friends today. We're still all of us friends today. And again, if somebody asks, how did you all meet? It's such a great story because they're like, there's nothing. There's no, he was working with this guy, so then this happened. And it's like, no, we just got together over music and now we hang out because we enjoy each other's company. What a delight.
I think that's wonderful, though, that you sought out a deliberate opportunity for meeting new people, right? Taking that percussion class. And in a way, that's such a simple thing for someone who wants to,
Yeah.
put themselves
100%.
out
I
there or meet
encourage
new people.
everybody
Like
to
doing a
take an adult
class
hobby
or
and go out. Yeah. 100%. Do anything. Find something you like. All right. If you're like, I'm an introverted person, I'm afraid of meeting people, etc. You must have a passion. You must have something you enjoy doing. Go there. If nothing,
absolutely.
you'll
And
meet other people with the same passion, right?
exactly. And I think a shared passion or a shared interest or even having like same favorite snack is wonderful
Exactly.
sort of fodder for the
100%.
starting
Like,
point of a
let's be clear.
friendship.
Let's not
One shared
intellectualize the
interest,
word passion. Shared interest. Yeah. Let's not
Exactly.
intellectualize the word passion. It can be, man, you guys can be Family Guy fans, right? Like, that's it. That can be your starting point. That you both like the show Family Guy or you both like something silly like that. But just something that breaks the ice and just gets you to connect with another human being is so life changing in your 30s and your 40s. I cannot even tell you.
Totally. And actually, this has made me think of what I read of as the friendship formula, developed by a former FBI psychologist, in fact, that
And who
says
do you
that,
trust?
yeah,
Who
right?
do you trust when it
No,
comes to
but
strong, trustworthy relationships
But
than the
hear me out, hear
FBI?
me out. Oh my goodness, seriously. I thought that was quite funny. But I did quite like the formula and it kind of speaks to what we were just talking about. So this is how it goes that friendship equals proximity into frequency plus duration into intensity. Okay, proximity into frequency plus
Yeah.
duration into intensity. And when you think of proximity and frequency, like literally just how close by physically even you are to someone and how often you're able to meet, I
Yeah.
think in some ways that the practical reality of that is actually so central to forming friendship. On that topic, though, do you think that as someone who people know, like given you're a public figure, or people think they might know, does that make it more difficult to to make new friends where perhaps you're up against certain assumptions or just a imbalance in how much they know about you versus you know about them at the get-go?
Sure, but in a way, it actually, yes, in some ways it makes it difficult because people come in with preconceived notions. But one way that it does make it easy is because I guess people know certain things about me. If there's certain people that have common interests as me, since I put them out there publicly, they will be more likely to approach me and talk about those things. Right? Like, for example, I put it out there that I enjoy pop culture and superhero stuff, which means now because that's a thing that people know about me, just the chances of me walking into a room and somebody coming to me and engaging me on a subject that they know like goes up. The other way that it can be an advantage is that, all right, you already know all of these things about me, but I don't know anything about you. So why don't you talk? Because the other thing that I think that doesn't happen, no, is that people don't get a chance to talk about themselves. Because as
Hmm.
adults, who really gets asked about, like, outside of the what's your job in our country, outside of what's your job, what's your caste, who gives a shit, right? About people are reduced to those two things, right? How many times do you as an adult get to go out there and talk excitedly to new people about things that you're passionate about, right? So I feel like sometimes because people already know about me, I'm not even trying to be a good person or whatever. It's just because people already know about me and I don't know about them, I'll be like, okay, but why don't you tell me more about you? And in their head, they're like, oh wow, this person is actually making space for me and my feelings here. And that's all it takes to start a friendship, really. Is like, hey, do you want something to eat or drink? And why don't you tell me about your hopes and dreams? And that's it. That's all it takes, really, to get
Yeah,
out
I
there.
mean,
And
I think especially actually in the Indian context, often no one ever asks you what your hopes and dreams are or who you
no,
like,
no.
who are you actually, who are
No,
you? What
exactly.
do you want in this life? I
Nothing.
think one of the only corners where perhaps that kind of self-inquiry is possible is friendships. And
Yes.
often as adults, we haven't even thought about those things. Like sometimes I think of the conversations I've managed to have with certain friends as so deeply clarifying of my own
Yes.
sort of internal landscape, you know?
Because sometimes you don't know what your thoughts are about something until somebody asks you a question about it, right? Which is only going to happen in a friendship. Like there's times I'm like,
Absolutely.
actually, I've never thought about this only until this question sort of came up. And yeah,
Yeah.
hugely rewarding.
And so, okay, so when did you meet your really good friends? Would you say that your childhood friends are your closest friends, or were they work friends? I feel like there's so many aspects of your life that must have lent themselves to intense proximity, duration,
They did. They did.
frequency. Do you have
I
pockets of different friends?
I do actually. I do have pockets of different friends because I feel like there's different groups of people that I have encountered adversity and battlefronts with, and that has forged us. I mean, you go through the Indian school education system together, um, forged in that battle. So there's four people who will never understand what it was like doing the SSE boards in the 90s and what a specifically a terrifying time that was, right? Because we were like, everybody has to be an engineer, everybody. Then I went to college and then I switched to mass media and I made these great friends with whom I just enjoyed hanging out. We enjoyed the same things. We enjoyed doing projects, building things together, forged from that. Then I went to the Asian College of Journalism, lived away from home for the first time, met entirely new perspectives, some battle forged friends from that. So I feel like I've been very fortunate to sort of pick up people wherever I go. And I think I've been fortunate that most of them, in the sort of times that they do overlap, actually get along quite well together. I firmly think, the biggest compliment I have ever been paid is not a compliment about myself. I had a work friend sort of join us at a New Year's Eve party with all of my friends, or my friends group was there. And at one point, I just sort of wandered over him to go do a vibe check and a drink check or whatever. And he looks at me and he goes, "Dude, all your friends are awesome and not one of them is pretentious." And I'm like, I don't think I've ever had a better compliment in my life. All right. Because what it says that I've chosen well. And this is a compliment that sort of validates the fact that I am in an incredibly safe and lovely group of people, and that somebody who's just walked in from the outside has been able to sort of see that warmth and chalo, I made good choices. I made good choices. And yeah, that's something that I'm incredibly grateful for, that I've managed to pick up some lovely people from, like, I can't think of a single era of my life where I'm like, oh, I'm not in touch with anybody from this era, like, at all.
Would you say, though, that there are some people who may have been closer at a time and now, perhaps
100%.
you've grown in different ways? Like, I think one thing about childhood friendships, at
Absolutely.
least for me, is that like some people just ended up being difficult to relate to as adults.
Yeah, 100%. There are some of them that are difficult to relate to. Some of them that I would not say I'm like day to day friends with. But also, like, some of them, while they might be difficult to relate to on a day to day basis, that friendship is well tended enough that if there's a 3 a.m. phone call, it'll take me 20 minutes to be there,
I
right?
love
Like, where
that.
even though we can't necessarily have a day to day sort of, because it's not even, because see, there's the people that are difficult to relate to just because some of their sort of social positions became impossible to digest. That's a whole different conversation, right? But there are certain people where it's difficult to relate to just because today I'm a 40-year-old, unmarried, childless, etc. person, whereas some of them that got married young now have two kids, are focusing on their kids' education, family unit, etc. All of that. I can't get mad at them for not having the time for me and for sort of forging another group with other parents and this thing where the school schedules are synced up and they can travel together, vacation together, all of that. But I also know that everything that we have from back then counts for so much that even if we sort of meet once a year, touch base, it keeps the friendship strong enough that if there's ever a problem, one person will be there for that. And I think that also counts for something. I think that is something that happens. I think friends sort of come closer and go away because life and friendship is marathon, not a sprint. So
Totally.
I think part of what has happened with getting older is also learning to sort of have less strong emotional reactions to the behavior of friends, especially older friends, because sometimes it's so easy to build up perceived slights and sort of judgments. So I think part of it just becomes this sort of always keeping in mind that this is a marathon, not a sprint. Can't keep score. like that for
Yeah, you
every
can't
little
keep
thing.
score. For me, it's like sometimes friends are like, "Oh, you never called me at midnight on my birthday," or like,
Yeah, no,
"You
fuck
didn't."
that.
For me, those little like it's not about seeming
You
like
can't
a
keep
good
score.
friend. You've got to be a good friend. Yeah, exactly.
100%. You can't keep score.
And what do you think of work friends? Some people say it's best not to mix work and friendship. But I mean, I'm in business with a very close friend of mine, for example. You were,
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
know,
See, I think
absolutely.
you are, if you're an emotional person, you are, it's not like we go to work as robots, right? We go there as people only. So if we connect with people and we're going to, I think what does happen though with work friends is you have to have a few boundaries at the start. Like, see, because work are two types of work friends, right? You're both employees of an organization and you happen to be sitting next to each other, or your work friends in the way where the two of you are trying to build something together, or three, four of you are trying to build something together. I think with work friends, what does happen is you do have to keep in mind that at the end of the day, um, you might be involved in a zero sum game with this person, right? Where at the end of the day, there might be one promotion where for you to win, they have to lose, or for them to win, you have to lose. So I do feel like there are certain limitations to when you're working with somebody because, and it's not even because they might be bad people or you might be a bad person. It's just the cards might fall a certain way one day. So I absolutely think you should have work friends. I don't think you can go into work and just be like this sort of sterile, nobody engage with me for anything
Oh,
other than Excel sheets, right? Because today, at the end of the day, you don't work in isolation. Usually teams do things, right? And today, like a team also has to have, aside from just a shared objective, they've got to have something that connects them, right? Something that makes you feel like, okay, this is my team. I trust them. They trust me. And today that can mean being able to go to them with like a small personal problem or something like that. But at the end of the day, if you go and you bitch out your boss and one of the members in the team uses that to sort of get promoted over you, then you have nobody to blame but yourself. Because the sort of danger was always built into the situation. So I do believe that you have to have slightly stronger boundaries and walk a little carefully. But I don't think that just because you work with somebody, you cannot at all be friends with them. I think that's very sort of reductive in a way.
totally. And I suppose what I had in mind was a bit more the second scenario that you outlined, where like going into business, starting something with friends, or where you have a choice of having a non-friend business partner, as opposed to, when you end up becoming friends with a colleague because you're sitting next to each other at work. It's a
Correct,
bit
correct,
different
correct.
than like deciding, whereas when you guys had a comedy collective, it was friends that you were
Yeah.
working with, right?
I think
So I
you
thought it
best make
might.
sure that your communication is really amazing. Otherwise, you're screwed, right? Don't get into business with a friend. I think the best advice I've ever heard about this is when you're getting into business with a friend, always imagine how both of you will react to each other in a worst case scenario, right? Everybody can be like Yari Dosti, best friends when business is killing it and things are going great, right? The question is, what happens when you get to a point where things are bad? Will you be able to have honest conversations with each other? Or is this going to be one of those things where it's just going to be like a slow motion nuclear explosion? I think that's very important. So if you are going to do that, I think one thing that you have to do is be very honest with yourself, or then really weigh the sort of business versus the friendship aspect of it, where you go in a worst case situation, if I lose both of these, is my life going to
Mm,
be okay, or both, or one of these? Because it can happen, right? Today a business can start off, today you and your best friend can start off with nothing but clear hearts and the best of intents, but it's 4 years
yeah,
later
shit
and you're 10
happens.
crore in debt and shit has happened, and this person has not been able to, and it's not from a bad place, but they've just not been able to deliver what they thought they could, or you've not been able to deliver. Can you negotiate that? Is that something, are those emotions you can negotiate without it becoming a problem? Or is one of you now going to try and sort of use the friendship relationship to gaslight the other into feeling bad about shit? So I think you've got to, it's complicated. I don't think there's a definitive yes or no answer, but it definitely is complicated, and it's something that you should enter with your eyes, ears, and brain very wide open in terms
Have you
of this. Don't
always
rush into it.
managed? Mm, don't rush into it. Have you always managed to preserve the friendships that you wish to, or have you also lost friendships,
No,
sometimes
I've
due
lost
to
friendships
factors
also.
beyond your control?
Due to factors beyond my control and some due to factors in my control also that I didn't control well. I mean, I'm not a
Mm,
perfect person. So I'm sure, like, as much as I'd like to believe that,
me
I'm
too.
sure there are people in my life or people who are not in my life that could look back and be like, there was a time where it would have been important for you to be there for me. You weren't, or there was this thing that it mattered and you weren't there, or you couldn't help me in this way, or you weren't the friend I needed. So yeah, I don't think that like every single friendship has worked out to 100% fruition and completion. I think more have than haven't. But yes, there is of course a certain percentages of friendships that have been lost, and that I'll always hurt a little bit about in my head, and also sort of feel like, okay, maybe one day, if
Life is
all is
long.
well, life is long and our roads will intersect again. But also, if
Yeah.
they don't intersect again, there's a part of me that goes, I understand and I accept, and it's sad and it hurts, but I hope I can use it to be a better friend in my next venture.
And would you say that when it comes to romantic relationships, is entering into a romantic relationship with a friend kind of like I was talking about with starting a business with a friend? Do you have rules
It
about
is.
that?
It's just one of those things where again you'd better be sure, right? Because at the end of the day, what happens when you sort of enter a romantic relationship with a friend, it's again the same thing as what's going to happen in a worst case scenario. What's going to happen? Like, is this going to blow up the entire friend circle if it goes south? If it is something that's going to blow up the entire friend circle, is the love still strong enough that it's worth blowing up the entire friend circle for if shit goes down at some point in future? So again, it's one of those things where again, it's you can't say it because on some level, one of the best things you could do is like get into a relationship with somebody who knows you inside out. But again, just eyes, ears, and head as clear as possible when doing it. Don't rush into it. Don't be an idiot about it. These things have huge, and they'll have consequences in more circles than one, because then you're blowing up your relationship and your friendship at the same time. So do
Yeah.
it, but again, just approach it with a certain amount of care and love and patience and awareness.
I love that. I think resilience is such a wonderful quality in a friendship, and some of my most valuable friendships are the most resilient ones, where you're able to overcome disagreements, conflict,
Yeah,
misunderstanding, whatever it may be. I think some friendships simply aren't resilient enough to also take on
it's
the
true.
stress of a business or a romantic relationship, and then you
Hundred
stand to
percent.
lose them. But I strive to cultivate friendships which would survive even those pressures and even if they don't work out.
Absolutely.
But it's not always the case, right?
No.
Are you friends with your exes, or some? Are you able to be? If you want to
I
talk
am
about that.
100%. No, 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 no. 100%. In the sense, I am with some, I'm not with others. And again, those friendships also, I want to be clear, I've gone through phases. I've gone through phases of where it's felt like an acquaintanceship, felt a bit like, oh, maybe right now the healthy thing for both of us to do is actually to draw away and make space for other people in our lives. Sometimes that friendship then expresses itself as anger or hurt feelings that come up that get processed sometimes many months after the relationship ends, right? Where either like, they'll call or be like, actually this thing that you did, it left like a very deep hurt. And then, I'll try and clarify and be like, okay, I'm sorry. How can I make it right today? Or vice versa. Where, in that friendship, I'll be talking, be like, actually, sorry, this is just bringing up certain feelings of hurt for me right now because, it sort of happened back to this thing in our relationship. So they're tough, but I feel like unless it was a very sort of, bad breakup or like where it wasn't amicable at all, the other way of looking at it, if you've been in a serious relationship with this person, there are things this person knows about you, like about your vulnerabilities and your lowest points that nobody else has seen. Why would you throw this friendship away? Like, why would you throw this baby out with the bathwater? Like, if there's no
Exactly.
relationship amicable, we might not even be like what's happened with some friends is there's been a cool off period for a bit where it is very difficult to have an honest friendship. And then it's afterwards, after a couple of years, when things have settled down, when, sort of everybody's temper is calmer again, you then approach something resembling a friendship where you go, we needed a cool off period from each other, but also you know me in a way that nobody else does. And you know about this specific hardship that I went through and were there for me in a way that nobody else does. So, why would I throw this friendship away? Why would I suddenly like take away your ability to call me at 3 o'clock in the morning if you have a problem or a certain vulnerability, or vice versa? And I think that those things, yeah, I've touched wood, I've managed to at the very least achieve like a sweet equilibrium with people I have been in a relationship with. Or at least now you have to ask them what their perspective is on it.
Yeah,
But
it's,
I
I mean,
think so. Yeah.
unfortunately, it's a two-way street, and sometimes
Yeah.
people are at varying degrees of sort of
Yeah.
comfort with saying sorry, with,
Absolutely.
kind of forgiveness also. I think I like to be able
Yeah.
to forgive, but I think some people haven't always forgiven me.
Fair.
So it can be hard, right? Maybe what do you do when someone wants to cut you out of their life? I guess then you just gotta suck it up.
What
But
will you do? You have
I
to suck
try
it
and
up.
cling on
Yeah.
to my friendships
Suck it up.
because,
Suck it up, and then you just randomly feel terrible about it. Like on
yeah.
a perfectly sunny, beautiful day that has nothing to do with anything. Like you're just walking down the street in Goa and be like, oh that shit, remember that person hates me. Damn, I should probably spend the rest of the day feeling terrible about that. That can happen. But
That can
like you said,
happen.
suck
That
it up.
can
That's
happen.
life. What are you gonna do? You can't force people, right?
Yeah,
And
because no one's perfect, right? I think, no matter how wonderful one seems, I mean, we are all hard to love,
100%.
every
Yeah.
single
Like I'm
one of
sure
us. And I
maybe I've
think
hurt
just
somebody
keeping
in a
that
way
in
that was
mind
difficult.
for me is
Yeah.
sort of
100%.
informing my adult relationships very much. Where like I am not perfect. I think I
100%.
try hard, but I am
I've stopped
difficult
trying.
to
I've
love.
stopped trying.
I
I
am
don't even own
difficult
a
to love.
comb anymore. I'm just
Rohan, this has
but yeah,
been
I
so
feel
much
that.
fun. As we wrap, we always like to leave our viewers and listeners with some practical tips or actionable insights. And as someone who I think really has done very well at navigating adult friendships, I would love to hear from you what you think people can do, and also the sort of qualities they can look for, perhaps in the friendships they pursue as adults.
Okay, so I'll start with the qualities first. First thing is people who are not afraid to have complicated conversations. People with whom you feel safe having complicated conversations. And by this, I mean that if there's ever any hurt or vulnerability or whatever, where you know that people aren't just going to fly off the handle or lose their shit, and they'll actually engage with you and have a conversation with you at a sweet and sober tempo. The other thing in terms of practical insight, I cannot stress this enough. Play with your friends. Play with your friends. Find a structured or unstructured way to be gleefully, happily, vulnerably stupid with each other. And when I say play, it can be as simple as dumb charades or Uno, where you're, making somebody eat a draw 12, or Monopoly deal or board games or whatever. But I cannot stress what it will do for your emotional strength and for just your cohesion as a group if as adults you can again just find a way to be giant cuddly pandas with each other, like, right? I think that is the thing we forget. And the last thing, if I would tell your friends constantly for absolutely no reason at all that you love them and you miss them, all right, for absolutely no reason at all. Like if you're listening to this right now, like I want you to just text a random friend, say, cutie, I love you and I miss you, and just that's it, and see how they respond. You might make their day. You don't know at what point of the day you'll be getting them. They might be having a shit day at work, they might have had a fight with their partner, family stuff might be hard, they might have gotten bad news. So if they just pick their phone up and see a text from somebody in their life who has no reason to text them transactionally, just saying, hey cutie, love you, I think you would change your friend's day.
I think we couldn't have ended on a sweeter note. And so I want to let everyone go and text their friends ASAP. And so I want to
Do it.
quickly tell everyone that they can find in the show notes where they can look at more of your work on social media and online. We're also going to be I'm very, very excited to hear from viewers. If anyone wants to write into us about friendship, love, or anything else, you can contact us at lovematters@dw.com. This is Love Matters, produced by the Indian Express and DW, Germany's international broadcaster. And we'd love it if you rate, review, share. Go share this podcast with your friends as well. Text them, tell them about the podcast. And hopefully we will see you again very soon. I'm Lisa Mangaldas, and I believe love matters.